It's like rags to riches, screw your life up a little bit and still find a way back based on passion, purpose, and drive. When you hear bits of your story told like that, what comes up for you?
Well, the biggest thing, I was never a victim. I was never the victim, and you kind of mentioned that. I take responsibility for everything that I've done and everything that I do. It goes back to two things: is choices. And for now, for me making the right choices and doing the right things, it's very simple for me to have these conversations. And I do get a look back, like what a jackass this guy was. When people talk about this book, there's a period in there for me. I know the period of the book, but I'm like, I'd slap the shit out this guy if I was ever just talking to him. He's a knucklehead. But
Mhm.
then again, as the book goes on and the story goes on, I'm going to go over there and pat that guy on the back instead of slapping him and be like, man, you did some of the things, and one of the things that everybody wants to do. They turned their life around. They made the transformation. And here you are today living and doing what you want. So again, it's, everyone says, how was the book? And the book was obviously just my latest thing, but I'm not going to settle on that victory. I've got more victories to go get, and that's one of the things too, is never be satisfied.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Victim mentality is huge in this day and age.
It's very huge.
Typically, I like to think that if there's incentive, you can then backtrack and predict behavior.
Mhm.
And I think there is a little bit of incentive around victimhood where people give you empathy. They give you the benefit of the doubt. They soften a little bit. And I don't think that was the case back in the day. When you want to think about like masculinity, it's like back in the day, it was like stoic, push your feelings down, get the job done. But in modern day, feelings are floating to the surface a little bit. And I'm not somebody that really leans on one side or the other of that. I think there's a time and a place to explore feelings and to acknowledge their existence, but not allow them to define you and
Correct.
then fall into making poor choices based on the victimhood. What are you seeing from modern day men, and how have you helped educate the world based on your story around victimhood?
I mean, we deal with trauma. The first questions that people always ask me, they say, well, Chad, how was your childhood? And I had a great childhood. My parents were very good. They're still married. I never had a problem. Uh, Again, my dad was a rancher. I came from a country background. So it's hard work. It's hard work. If you fall off the horse, get your ass back up on it. But that's really how I live my life. Nowadays, we as parents, we're trying to keep our kids out of situations that we were in, by learning and by doing. But by doing that, we're also creating weak men. We're creating
Mhm.
weak men because we don't want them to do what we did. I've got two boys, and again, my job was to keep them out of trouble. Now, thankfully, and I do say this openly, thankfully, both of my kids got in trouble early because now they understand that you're not excluded from this. It can happen to anybody, even when your dad was in trouble, right? So they got into a little bit of trouble early. They're doing great now. They both are having kids on the way. I got one with a grandson right now. But again, I want my kids to struggle because that's how you're going to get better. If I was to keep them and coddle them, like you said, the empathy stuff, I have a whole thing. And one of my old trainers that was at the 49ers, he says, if you're looking for sympathy, you can find in the dictionary between shit and syphilis, right? I'm
Oh,
not here
wow.
to, I'm not here to give you sympathy, right? We're here to get you better. And it starts with your feelings. And we talk about it. Feelings are good or feelings are bad. It just determines, it's like fire, how you use them. It can either heat your house or it can burn the shit out of you.
Mhm.
So how do people use feelings nowadays? And I think that's the biggest thing, is that, the society that we're in, it's soft. It is soft. And I hate to say that, but I've seen it incarcerated when I was incarcerated. I've seen it in the streets. There's a lot when I was, selling drugs and running around through the hood. There's a lot of people that would get jacked just because you knew they were soft and you could take
Mhm.
their shit. Um, Again, don't condone it, but that's just, you don't want to leave yourself, susceptible to situations. And I think the biggest thing is that we have to create stronger men.
Yeah, I totally agree. What's that famous quote? Hard times create strong men,
Yep. Strong men
right?
create weak. Yep. 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 And I use that all the time. I use it all the time. And it's true.
I
So
mean, it's
generations.
interesting too because our society right now is conditioned to seek comfort. We had the
Mhm.
author Michael Easter on the show, the author of The Comfort Crisis, and we talked about that. I mean, we're in these beautiful beds or chairs. We're looking for cushioned shoes, can set the temperature to whatever we want in whatever location or vehicle that we have. You have heated seats. Everything's turning into a massage,
Yeah. Everything.
chairs and whatnot. And there's a part of that, like you said, with feelings relating to that. When you have comfort available, it can be a tool, But when you're seeking the dopamine hit and the comfort all the time, now it becomes a crutch.
Yep.
At what point in your life did you kind of make that observation that so much of life is a game, and understanding that things like feelings and things like these comfort seeking modalities, they're simply tools, and it comes down to the ratio and how you use them in your life. But our world conditions us to think like avoid pain at all costs and seek comfort. But then as a byproduct, we don't learn that much. And by avoiding pain, the learning lessons aren't there, and human beings are not getting sharpened. They're becoming victims. They're becoming the people that just want handouts. They want to be saved. I mean, Mel Robbins talks about it often. The way to change your life is to realize that nobody's coming to save you. Take full ownership and responsibility for the choices that you make. That in and of itself, that little mindset can reshape the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. And that's what helped me, is I took responsibility of everything. When I was in prison, I was sitting there talking to people and I would listen to people. They were sitting there, I got screwed by the system. Somebody snitched on me or I got set up. But again, that's the victim mentality. I went in there and said, everything I did was my choice. It's my choice to get here. It's going to be my choice to get out of here. And then when I got out, it was my choice to stay out of there. They say 67% of the people, they end up back in prison. That was not going to be me. They also say that people that smoke crack, they don't make it off of there. I was smoking crack back on the streets. I got out of there. So I've been able to do this. I know how to get into trouble, but the best thing too is I know how to get out of trouble. And it all becomes off of choices. I wasn't looking for a program, or I wasn't looking for somebody to comfort me. This was like, Chad, this is on you. When I met my wife, Jackie, that's when I knew that I had a good partner, and she's not soft by any means. I said, she's Italian. She's the realest person I met. There's no sign of weakness. There is not one sign of weakness because again, you're a man. I don't want my wife stronger than me. So you have to buckle up. And she told me, she said, I've already got kids. I don't need another one. So you need to change. But that's when, when I met her, I knew that this was my change. This is what it was going to be, because now I have somebody that's going to help me make these right decisions instead of just going on my own whim, knowing I can get in trouble and then get out of it. I was done with it. That was a hard life.